Masechet Baba Mesia Daf Pe Zayin. Since we learned in the Mishnah that if someone offers the workers food, then he has to give them greater than the meal of King Shlomo because they are Bnei Avraham. And so the Gemara previously said, oh, that means that the meal of Avraham was greater than the meal of Shlomo. Since we mentioned the meal that Avraham served the angels, we have a few more derashot about that story. Vayera elav Adonai be'elone mamre, hu yoshe petach ohel kechom hayom. Hashem appeared to Abraham in Elone Mamre. He was sitting at the door of the tent at the heat of the day. Mai kechom hayom. Why does the pasuk specify the time of the day when it was very hot? Amar bichama. ברבי חנינה, אותו היום יום שלישי שמילה של אברהם היה. ובא הקדוש ברוך הוא לשאול באברהם. So Rabbi Chama Rabbi Chanina explains that was the third day after Abraham got a Brit Milah, which is mentioned in the exact previous chapter in Bereshit. And Hashem came to visit Abraham to do Bikur Cholim. Third day is considered the most painful day. Hosia Kadosh Baruch Hu Chama min artika, kedei shelo yatriach oto sadik be'orchim. And so Hashem wanted to protect Abraham, and so he brought out the Hama. Interesting is to be Hama that talks about the Hama, the sun. Hashem brought the sun out of its sheath to make it extra hot, so that, number one, there wouldn't be travelers because it's too hot, and also that Abraham wouldn't be staying outside, he would stay inside in the shade. And that way, he could relax and recover and would not have to deal with guests. So Hashem was trying to allow Abraham to rest. Yet Abraham thought that maybe there's still maybe some guests out that need some help and need some food and water, especially because it's so hot. So he sent Eliezer to go outside and see if there are any travelers. Eliezer went out and said, no, I didn't find anybody. Abraham says, I don't believe you. Maybe there is a guest and Eliezer is just protecting Abraham so that he would rest. But so Abraham says, I have to go out myself. This is the folk saying that is spoken in Eretz Yisrael, that you cannot trust a servant. Abraham was right. Sure enough, he goes out and he sees that Hashem himself was standing at the doorway. He came to visit. It's funny, Hashem brought out the sun so there'd be no visitors, yet he himself also came to visit. And this is why the pasuk, it's actually the one pasuk later, here it says Hashem appeared to Abraham. And then, two Pesukim later, Vayomar, Adonai, namasetichem be'necha, al na ta'abor me'al abdecha. So he says, right, please do not leave. And so that means that Hashem was there, and he came to visit him, and he was going to leave. Now, why was Hashem going to leave? Kivan dechazateka asar v'shareh amar, lavor achara lemekamacha, hainu dichtib, vayisa ena vayar, v'hineh shelosha nashim nisabim ala vayar, vayaros likarata, mekaratu kamul ale, ki chaziu dekale sa'ar, when Hashem did come to visit him, but then when he saw that Abraham was tying and untying the bandages, he says, it's not proper for me to be here, even Hashem. Number one, it's a sensitive spot. He's tying and untying. He wants to have modesty and be alone. Second, he's in pain and does not have the energy to entertain guests. And so therefore, Hashem said, okay, I came to visit, I'm leaving, I wanted to let you rest. And that's why Abraham says, no, don't leave, al na ta'abor. Now we see the same thing happen with the angels. According to Peshat, it sounds like Vayera alav Hashem, that the angels are in themselves a manifestation of Hashem. But in the way Midrash is reading it, is two different things. Hashem came to visit, and also 3 angels came to visit. And so it says regarding them as well that Abraham looked up and he saw these 3 men standing upon him. Standing upon him sounds like they're right next to him, they're right near. But then it says he ran after them. Well, why do you have to run after them? I thought they were right near. So it means the same thing. First they came and they were standing right next to Abraham. And then the angels saw that Abraham was in pain. So they said, oh, it's not right for us to come here to lodge here or to get to be hosted by Abraham because he's in pain. And so they started to leave, such that Abraham had to run after them and told them, no, I want you to stay. Manin hu shalosha nashim. Who are these three men? Michael, Gabriel, Urfael, the three angels. Michael sheba lebaseret Sarah. Raphael sheba lerapet Avraham. Gabriel azal lemahpeche listom. Michael came to announce that Sarah will have a child. Raphael came to give healing to Avraham, and Gabriel came to overturn Sodom. V'haketi v'yavo shena malachim Sodoma ba'ereb. Wait a second, but it says that afterwards, two angels went to Sodom. So if Raphael already and Michael and Raphael already had jobs, so it should have been only Gabriel that went to destroy Sodom. Why does it say two angels? It means that Michael went with Gabriel, Michael went to save Lot, and Gabriel would destroy Sodom. And this is exact in the pasuk because it says in singular, he overturned the cities, referring to Gabriel only. It doesn't say plural. So they didn't both go to destroy Sodom, but if Michael did go to save Lot. מה ישנה לגבי אברהם דכתיב כן תעשה כאשר דיברת ומה ישנה לגבי לוט דכתיב ויבשר בה מאוד. How come when Abraham invited the angels, he said, come and sit and I'll give you some food? How come they said, yes, we will do so? They agreed to Abraham's offer. Whereas for Lot, he said Lot had to press them a lot. No, you have to stay. And at first they did not agree. Amar Rabbi Elazar, mikan shemesarbin lekatan ven mesarbin legadol. Rabbi Elazar says we learn from here that it's okay to decline a request from a lower person, but if a great person says invites you or asks you to do something, then you may not decline. Ketib vecha pat lechem uchtiv ela bakaras Abraham. First, Abraham tells them, come sit down and I'll get you a little bit of bread. But then, right after that, he goes and runs to get a calf. So which one is it? Is he going to give them bread or is he going to give them meat? So we learn from here that tzaddikim, they say a little, but they do a lot. He says, come, I'll give you a little bread. But in fact, he did a lot more. So it's never good to boast and say, look at these great things I did. Right? Just say, no, I did very little. But when you talk, but when you actually do, you should do a lot. The opposite. They are big talkers. Oh, I'll give you this. I did this. Everything is so great. And meanwhile, you look at the record, they hardly do anything at all. So rather, show if you want to be a host, show you care about your guests through your actions and not just through your words, right? People say, oh, come over, I want you to come. They're always inviting, but they never actually send an invitation, right? And whereas, don't promise anything, just actually offer people things and do good things for others. That's more important as the action than the empty promises. Min delan me'efron, where do we see a rasha who talks a lot and does little? Meikara ketiv eres 400 shekel kesef ulbasof ketiv vayishma Abraham le'efron vayishkol Abraham le'efron et hakesef asher diber be'ozne bnei chet 400 shekel kesef ober lasocher de la shekal mine ela kantere tika duchta de karele letikla kantere. Ephron, when he's negotiating with Abraham wants a burial spot. So Ephron says, 400 shekel kesef, benu benecha, between us, what is it? Meaning, like he's saying, you could take it. What for? Even though it's worth 400 shekel kesef, so what? It's a small amount. So he's making it like he's very being generous, like as if he's going to give a good price and a discount, and he wants to be nice to Abraham. But in the end, right, what do we see? Abraham gets the point. He hears what Ephron really wants, and he pays in full, and in fact, it's a lot of money, and he pays with the special currency, Ober la Socher. What does that mean? That Ephron would only take these centenaria coins, sent like from 100. These are special coins. There are places where they call a shekel kantera. It would be like cent in Greek. And so these were very expensive, hard to find coins that you could use anywhere. And so really Ephron, even though he made it like he's being generous, it's like, what's 400 shekel? But really, he when it came to actions, he had demanded a high price paid with the highest currency. Ketiv kemach utiv solet. So Abraham says to Sarah, go and prepare kemach and solet. So which one is it? Right, let's look at the pasuk. It says, now kemach is regular flour, solet is fine flour. So which one was it? So the Rabbi Yitzchak says, we learn from here that women are more stingy regarding guests than a man is. A man says, Abraham saying, give them not kemach, not just kemach, give them solet, give them the best. Otherwise, she would have given them only regular flour. Maybe the idea is that she is more careful with the finances of the house, not to spend everything on guests and have nothing left for her own family. Ketib lushi v'asi ugot, uchti v'yikachem avelav ben bakar. Now, even though Abraham told Sarah, go and hurry up and knead and make cakes, when he actually brings the food out to the guests, he brings them curd and milk and a calf, and never says that he served them the cakes. So what happened to the bread? How come he didn't bring it? Amar Ephraim miksha'a. Tamido shel Rabbi Meir mishmed Rabbi Meir. Interesting figure. Ephraim Miksha is not called a rabbi, not very well known, but there's some minor more minor students. He's a student of the Tanna Rabbi Meir, and he said, Abraham Avinu ochel chulin b'tahadahaya v'sarai meno tohayom persani da. Abraham would always eat all food while being tahor, even though really only kohanim have to do that when they're eating terumah, or anyone who's eating a korban. Nevertheless, there were many people during the second Bet HaMikdash that would make sure to always be ritually pure when they ate food. That's the origin of till today that we do netilat yadayim and wash hands before eating bread. Anyway, Abraham would only eat and handle bread when he was tahor. But that day, Sarah, who became nida, right? She became fertile again all of a sudden, and so all of a sudden she became nida. She was tameh. She touched this bread, and therefore Abraham wanted to stay in purity, so he would not touch the bread, and that's why he did not serve it to his guests. ויאמרו אליו, איה שרה אשתך, ויאמר הנה באוהל, להודיע ששרה ממנו שנואה הייתה. אמר רב יהודה אמר רב, איתמר רבי יצחק, יודעים היו מלאכי אשר ששרה ממנו באוהל הייתה, אלא מאי באוהל כדי לחבבה על בעלה. So the angels asked Abraham, where is your wife Sarah? And he said, she is in the tent. This teaches us how modest Sarah was, that she stayed in the tent, even though they had these evidently important guests outside. She didn't come outside to be in front and center in front of the guests, but she was modest and stayed in the tent. And Rav says, and some say to be Yitzchak, that the angels knew that Sarah was in the tent. They're angels, don't they know everything? So why did they ask? Rather, it was so that Abraham would answer, oh, she's in the tent. And then he would be able to kind of show off, oh, my wife, look how modest she is. And they would say, they would show their expression that, oh, it's very impressive that you have a wife that's so modest that she is in the tent. And then Abraham would feel more love to her husband. So this shows a nice thing. It's always good to ask people, even if you know already, about their loved ones or about things that that person would be proud of, so that you give them the chance to say it, to express it, and to be appreciative, and thereby bring more love within that relationship. Or a different answer, the angels, they were saying zimun after they ate together, and the custom was that everybody drinks from the wine that they use over Birkat HaMazon. So they said, bring her out so she can share and drink the wine. And Teneh mishum Rabbi Yosef, lama nakud al ayo shebe elav. And now a braita. The word elav in the Torah has dots on top of the letters Aleph, Yod, and Vav. There are several places throughout the Torah that it's written in the Sefer Torah has dots on tops of letters. A dot on top of a letter would show that there's something either suspicious about it, like it should be erased, or to highlight it. So the rule is when the majority is of of letters have a dot on them, that means they're meant to be highlighted. When if it's only one, then that means you should read it without that letter. So here, since it's 3 out of 4 letters have a dot, so you can read it ayo, where. Where is he? Limedat Torah derech eretz sheishal adam b'achsanya shelo v'ama Shemuel en sholim b'shlom isha kelal al yedei ba'ala shaneh. So by reading it that way, vayomeru ayo, they asked, where is he? So we learned from there that a person should always ask the host about the spouse. So that here you already have ayeh, but the ayeh is asking Avraham, where is Sarah? But if and when they're speaking to Sarah, or anyone who's speaking to a hostess should say, where is your husband? How is he doing? And so so the ayah is where is he, ayeh is where is she, and that way you learn that whenever you see either the husband or the wife who are hosting you, you should ask about the other person, about the other spouse. Now hold on, Shemuel said one should not ask about the welfare of a woman at all. Don't how is she? Talk about women, talk to women, send messages to women. This is not good. It's too much social interaction that could lead to improper, too much intimacy between married people that are married to others. To adultery, and so how could they ask about Sarah at all? And the answer is, if you're asking through the husband, then that is fine. That's proper, and it's a good thing to do. What you should not do is talk to the wife too much directly, or ask someone else who's not married to her, oh, how's she doing? Tell me about her. It shows I'm interested in her. No, don't be interested in her. Don't talk about other people's wives. So by doing it in this way, the point is actually reminding everyone that she is married and that he is married. So it's in a way saying to the husband, to Avraham, how is Sarah, is recognizing, I recognize she is married to you, you are hers. I just care about both of you. That's what I'm asking. And same thing when he's speaking to a woman, and you say, how is your husband? So this is not flirtatious, because if you were flirting, you wouldn't mention the husband. So the point is to say, oh, how's your husband? Tell him I said hello. And that increases, shows that you care about them, and increases the love between the couple themselves. Who are married, that you're showing the husband, oh, your wife is a special person, or showing the wife, your husband is a special person, right? I care about them, and I want the best for you and your loved ones. So this is important, proper etiquette. אחרי בלותי הייתה לי עדנה, אמר רב חיסדא, אחר שנתבלה הבשר ורבוע כמתים, נתעדן הבשר ונתפשטו הכתמים, וחזר היופי למקומו. So after Sarah hears that she's going to have a child, she's surprised. She says, after I became old, now I will have edna, now I will have pleasure. Rav חיסדא explains, after her skin got worn out and is all full of wrinkles, now, once again, it will become soft and the wrinkles smoothed out, and she'll gain her original youthful beauty. Ketiv Adoni Zaken, Uchtiv Ani Zakanti, Delam Motiv HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kideka'amera Ihi. At first, when Sarah expresses surprise, she says, how can we have a child when my husband is old? She was saying he's too old to have a child. But when Hashem came and repeated what Sarah said to Avraham, Hashem repeated Sarah saying, I am too old. I, Sarah, am too old. So you see that Avraham did not give an exact quotation of what Sarah said. How could Hashem misquote? תנא דבר רבי ישמעאל, גדול שלום שאפילו הקדוש ברוך הוא שינה בו, שנאמר, ותשחק שרה בקרבה וגומר, ואדוני זקן, וכתיב ויאמר השם אל אברהם, וגומר, ואני זקנתי. So, Baraita from the school of Rabbi Ishmael says, we learn from here, how great peace is that even HaKadosh Baruch Hu will diverge from the truth, from what actually happens, for the sake of Shalom Bayit. Even though she said, how can I have a child? My husband is old. Now, if Hashem would repeat that exactly, Sarah said that you're too old. What? She said that about me? I'm too old? You know how old she is? Right? So then there Hashem would go to Sarah, how dare you talk about me that I'm too old? And it would cause a fight. And therefore Hashem changed what she said, and instead quotes Sarah saying, how can I have a child? After all, I, Sarah, am too old. A couple of chapters later, Sarah says, who would have thought that Abraham can have and Sarah can nurse children? It says in plural, Henika banim Sarah. Right? Who could have said about Abraham that? Who could have told Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? So, Kama banim henika Sarah. Sarah only had one child, only Yitzchak. Why should it say just henika ben? Why banim? Amar bi Levi. Oto hayom shegamal Abraham et Yitzchak beno asa seuda gedola. Hayu kol umot haolam merannenim ve'omrim ritem zaken uzkena shebiu asufim min hashuk ve'omrim benenu zeh ve'lo dela sheosim mishte gadola midibrehem. So Rabbi Levi explained. On that day, on the day that Yitzchak was weaned, Abraham made a huge celebration, a feast to celebrate the fact. And he invited everybody. Now, the other nations of the world were gossiping, complaining. Says, did you see this old man and this old woman? You think they had a child? Impossible. They can't have a child. They must have gotten some foundling from the market, and they brought him in, and they started calling him their son. And not only that, they're doubling down on their lie by making a big feast to bolster their false claim. That's why they're making such a big deal out of it. But they couldn't believe that Abraham and Sarah actually had a biological child. So Ma'as Abraham Avinu halach v'zimen kol gedolado v'Sarah menu zimenat neshotehem. So Abraham says, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to invite all of the great men of the generation. And Sarah invited all of the women. And everybody, all these people brought their little babies and did not bring the nursemaids. ונעשה נס בשרה ממנו ונפתחו דדיה כשני מעיינות והניקה את כולן. Apparently these very important rich people, the mothers did not nurse themselves, their own kids, but they would hire wet nurses to do that. And they made sure, listen, leave your wet nurses at home, we're going to take care of your infants too. And a miracle happened with Sarah that her breast became like 2 springs, and she was able to nurse all of the children who came. And so that's the point is, look how fertile she is, right? So then they would see with their own eyes. But that proof was not sufficient. Gossip still goes on. And they said, yes, Sarah's 90. She's going to give birth to Abraham 100. He's going to have a child. Impossible still. So immediately the countenance of Yitzchak changed so that he looked just like Abraham. And immediately everyone said, okay, now we're convinced. And this is explaining the doubling in the pasuk, ve'ele toledot Yitzchak ben Abraham. Abraham holid et Yitzchak. You just said Yitzchak ben Abraham. So you have to tell me again that Abraham gave birth to Yitzchak. So this is an answer to those who were gossiping and said no. And then they looked at them and said, oh, these 2 people look exactly alike. They must be father and son. Ad Abraham lo haya zikna. Until Abraham came around, nobody grew old. They would just stay the same. They would look, I don't know what age, 30, and then they would live for a long time. They would live till 100, 120, and then they drop dead, looking like they were 30. But this was a problem. Since Yitzchak and Abraham looked exactly alike, okay, when he's a baby, you could tell that's Yitzchak. But then when he grew up, now Abraham and Yitzchak look like twins. And people go to Abraham, talking to him, thinking it's Yitzchak, and vice versa. So we need a way to distinguish between generations. So Abraham prayed, Hashem, please make people look older when they advance in age. That way you can tell how old they are. And so Hashem prayed, and this is the first time that the Torah calls anybody zaken. So it means Abraham was the first one to look old. Anybody complaining about wrinkles and stuff, you can go and ask Abraham why he said that, why he prayed for that. Ad Yaakov lahava chulsha. Until Yaakov came, there was no sickness. Rather, people were healthy all the time. And then one day, at 120 years old, they dropped dead without ever being sick. Sounds like a good thing, right? But it's not such a good thing because then there's no preparation. All of a sudden, a person was healthy and now they're gone. It's very difficult for families when that happens, if someone dies in an accident or a sudden heart attack. But if someone's sick for a while, then you're able to prepare. That person can prepare their affairs, bless their children, do what they have to do. And so there's time to have emotional and practical time to prepare for the person's end. Ada Elisha lahavad chalish ve'it pach. Ata Elisha be'arachame ve'it pach. Shenemar ve'Elisha chala et cholyo. Asher yamut bo mikla dechala choli achariti. Until Elisha came, no one who got sick ever got better. If you got sick, then that means that's it. That was an introduction to death. No one ever got better. But Elisha came and prayed that there should be a possibility of getting better. Maybe a person sinned and deserved death, and so they get sick as a warning, and they say, okay, I learned my lesson, I want to make teshuvah, so allow the person to get better. And that Elisha prayed for that and got it. Elisha himself was sick twice before he died. As it says, Elisha, he was sick with the sickness, as a double language, and only then that he died of. So that means he was actually sick 3 times, but twice he got better. So you see that he was sick before, but got better before. Tenu Rabbanan, Shelosha cholayim chala Elisha, echad shedechafo legechazi b'shtei yadav, ve'echad shegera bedubin betinokot, ve'echad shemet bo, shenemar, ve'Elisha chala et cholyo asher yamut. But Aita says that Elisha was sick 3 times. One, he deserved to be sick because Gehazi, who was his servant, Gehazi went against what Elisha told him to do in a bad way, and Elisha pushed him away with both hands, totally pushed him away, but should have been softer, pushed him away with one hand, but keep a connection with the other hand, and so he was too strong in his reaction to Gehazi. So Elisha was suffered for that and was sick. Second time, when there were these children who were making fun of him, and he brought bears to kill the children. Also, overreaction, to say the least. And so Elisha also got sick because of that. And the third time he got sick is right before he actually died. As it says, the same pasuk, Hala cholyo asher yamut. So that's 2 times that he was sick and got better, and 1 time that he died. Back to the Mishnah, Ela ad shelo yatrud b'melacha se v'emor lahem al menat she'en lachem alai ela pat v'kitnit. At the end of the story, Rabbi Yochanan Matya told his son, go back and tell the workers before they start working that they're only going to get bread and beans, the typical meal. Amar le Rav Acha bered Rav Yosef Rav Chisda, pat kitnit tenan or pat vekitnit tenan. Amar lehen, amar le ha-Elohim siricha vav ki mordeya de librot. So, question from Rav Acha, son of Rav Yosef to Rav Chisda, what's the proper reading of the Mishnah? Is it legume bread? In other words, it's very cheap bread made out of beans, not even made out of ground wheat. Is that all, like really cheap food? Or is it bread and beans, which is more substantial? That vav makes a big difference. And his answer was, to swear by God, yes, you need a vav. You have to give them bread and also beans, and that vav is so important. You have to make it really big as either an oar made out of cypress wood, or even better, a librot, a ship, a Lebothian ship that had very tall masts. So make the vav as big as that mast. Not that we physically write it big. But it's not written anyway. It's a Mishnah. It's memorized. But the point is that this vav is very important. Yes, you have to give them bread and also beans. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Eno sarich hakol k'minhag hamedina. Rashbag disagrees and said, even in that story, if you just tell them, I'm going to provide you sustenance, then it means the regular regional practice, and you don't have to specify. And then as everything follows, at the end of the Mishnah says everything follows the custom of the place. Hakol la'tuye mai. What is this generalization coming to add? La'tuye haditnan. Hasucheret ha'poel. V'amar lo ke'echad uvechishnayim mibnei ha'ir noten lo kepachut shebasechirot. Dibrei Rabbi Yoshua. Hachamim omerim mishammenin benehem. So the Hakol is coming to add the law that we learn in a baraita. If someone hires workers and says, I'm going to pay you like one or two of the city workers, the normal wage that they get. So there's two opinions. Rabbi Yoshua says you find the lowest paid workers, and that's how much lowest paid worker, and you give and you pay that amount. You see, the thing is, when you say like the workers, well, there's workers in the same town that will work for a little more and a little less. The price varies. So if you just say, I'll pay you like one of the workers, then he only has to pay him the lesser of all the workers. Hachamim, however, say, since he said one or two of them, so then you know what you have to do. You take the lowest paid worker, the highest paid worker, and you average it out, and he has to pay the average salary to the person that he just hired. Since we were talking about paying workers while they're working during the day, if the boss provides them lunch, then he has to provide them a certain amount of lunch. So then we go, and the next Mishnah will elaborate on the biblical law. Let's look at the Pesukim first, that workers in a field can eat while they work. It says, "Ki tavo b'cherem re'echa ve'achalta anabim kenafshecha sob'echa ve'el kelicha lo titen." If you go into your neighbor's vineyard, you can eat grapes there as much as you desire till you are satiated, but you cannot put you could not take any grapes and put them in a vessel to take as takeaway. You can eat it there, but you cannot take it home because then you could gather all the grapes in the whole thing. Now the Pesukim here doesn't say that it's talking about a worker specifically. The Gemara will make that derasha. It could be from a Peshat perspective that is talking about anyone who passes by. Listen, you have a lot of grapes. If someone passes by and they want to eat a few grapes, it's not going to hurt your bottom line significantly. So you kind of make it open for passers-by, poor people that are hungry to come and eat till they're satiated. It's a really beautiful thing. Kind of open house. They lived in small villages, remember. It's not like 1 million people are going to come and eat everything. So the first pasuk is about a vineyard. And here it says, when you come to standing grain, kama, grain that's standing, it's ready to eat. You can eat some grain raw, chew on it. And so you can take some ears with your hand, but you cannot take a sickle to cut them down. Maybe you even take some, it doesn't say you can't take them home for this. Maybe take them home, make a little bread. Anyway, you could take a handful, but just that you pull out with your hand, but you can't take a sickle because then with a tool you could take a lot. So same thing for vineyard as for standing grain. And sickle do not put on the standing grain. Corn does not in these Pesukim, in these translations, doesn't mean corn like we know it, the American food, but rather it means grain. Okay, so this is what we learned. Peshat might be talking about anyone, but we're going to see the Gemara says it's referring to workers while they are working, and so now we want to define what does this apply to. Ve'elu ochlin min haTorah. The following, based on the Torah law that we just read, can eat while they're working. So 3 criteria. Number 1, if you're working on something that's attached to the ground, when it's finished, meaning when it's harvest time. So that prevents, you cannot, if you're just pruning or helping out while they're growing and they're not ripe yet, you cannot eat from them. They're not ready anyway, so you cannot take from them. Only if you're actually cutting it down, harvesting, and you want to eat a little, then it's permitted. That's the earliest time. And once it's cut and is no longer attached to the ground, you can continue to eat some of it until it's finished its production, until it's processed. Once it's processed, then you're going to have it's tebel. You're going to have to bring terumah maaser. Before it's processed, you don't have to yet bring terumah maaser, and you can eat a snack from it. So that's the window. Not earlier than the harvest, and not later than the processing is complete. And it only applies to something that grows from the ground. Not, for example, if you're churning butter, making cheese, and you're working for someone with his cows and producing milk. No, that's not attached to the ground, so you cannot eat while you're working in that. Ve'elu she'en ochlim. And now the opposite is also true. The following one cannot eat. Ha'oseh b'mchubar lakarka b'sha'a she'en gemar melacha b'talush bin hakarka me'achar shenigmera melachto u'b'davar she'en gidulo min ha'aretz. If it's still attached to the ground, but it's not yet ready, it's not yet ripe, then you cannot eat from it. And if you already cut it, you cannot eat from it after you already finished processing it. And if it doesn't grow from the ground, then you cannot eat while you're working it. What's the source? Good. So we just saw the pasuk. That's about a vineyard. Fine. I know that in a vineyard, from working, I can eat some grapes. But how do I know for other things that grow from the ground? So I can learn the binyan av just from vineyard, just like a vineyard. What's unique about it? It grows from the ground, and when it's finished growing, so then it's ready to eat, and a worker can eat it. So to anything that grows from the ground, once it's ready for harvesting, the worker can eat from it. Here's the problem. Hold on, maybe grapes are unique because there's a special of olelot, which is if you leave an incomplete cluster while you're harvesting, you take the full clusters. If you leave some incomplete clusters, then you cannot take them. Leave it for the poor. That's just the gleanings, just a little bit. And the owner shouldn't be so stingy that he take every last grape, leave some from the poor. That's a unique law for vineyards. So maybe we cannot learn from vineyard to other things. We can learn to everything, all things that grow from grain, which was the second pasuk. How do you know grain? Where's from that pasuk? If you come to the standing grain of your friend, so you're allowed to take some ears in your hand, just not with a sickle. No, but grain also has a unique law that if you turn it into flour and make bread, then you have to give challah. So maybe that's a unique law that applies only to grain, that says that people can take. The point is that just like challah, you have to give some to a kohen, so too you have to give and allow workers to take. Maybe that's unique to grain because that's special, that has the law of challah, and so the law that you have to let workers eat maybe only applies to challah. This is, hold on, how do you know that the word kama in this pasuk regarding letting the workers eat applies only to the 5 grains that challah applies to? Challah you only have to give when you make dough from the 5 grains, not from other things that grow. So maybe this is talking about all grains, and therefore you wouldn't have this problem, because in fact, if all grains you have to let the workers eat, so then you would be able to learn a binyan av from the word kama to everything that grows, because it doesn't have, not everything that is called kama do you have to bring is chayav in challah. So we answer atya kama kamad ketib hacha kitabo bekamat recha v'chtib hatam me'achel charimesh bakama matam kama demechayeva bechala afachaname kama demechayeva bechala. No, we make a gezerah shava. Says the word kama twice. Says it here regarding letting the workers eat if you come to the standing grain of your friend. It also says regarding korban ha'omer, which is brought from barley, which is one of the 5 grains. When the sickle, you first cut the first barley that's ready. So just like there it's talking about barley, which is liable in challah, so too the word kama here means that this law applies only to any one of the 5 grains that from which you have to bring challah. And therefore, I cannot learn from kama to all other things that grow. So we cannot learn from kama to all other things that grow. So we'll say kedem yochiach. Okay, let's bring back the vineyard. And vineyard grapes is not chayav in challah, and yet you have to let the workers eat. But we already said that vineyard has a unique thing in that you have to leave the unfinished clusters. Kama tochiach. Okay, so we'll bring kama because that doesn't have a law of the olelot. So vechazad hadin lo rizeh ki rizeh hasad hasheveh shebehen sheken davar shegedule karka b'shat gemar melacha poel ochel bo av kol davar shegedule karka b'shat gemar melacha poel ochel bo. Okay, so you know what? We'll bring the logic all the way around, and the kedem is not the same as kama, and kama is not the same as kedem. So each one has a unique aspect that disqualifies it, but they have a common denominator that shows that those unique aspects are should not be disqualifying. Because what do they have in common? They're things that grow from the ground, and when it's ready to be harvested, the worker can eat it. So we can take the two together and learn the binyan of that all things that grow, as when it's ready, the worker can eat from it. Hold on. They actually have a different common denominator in that they can be offered on the mizbeach. Some grain is offered on the mizbeach, like korban ha'omer, and meal offerings in general come from wheat and barley. And grapes are used in yayin, that's wine that's poured on the mizbeach. So maybe it has to be something that has to be poured, that's only something that is used on the mizbeach. Now we can include one other thing in that. So if you have an olive grove and you're working, you can eat some olives while you're there, because also that is olive oil is served on the mizbeach. But then we ask whether we need to learn about olives from this. Are we really learning olives from this, the common denominator type of binyan av that we just did, that these two things have in common, and therefore we can learn olives also? We can learn about olives more directly because the pasuk in Shoftim says that he burned the produce and the standing grain and Kedem Zayit, which means Kedem refers to olives also. So the first pasuk in Devarim that says Kedem, it could mean not only a vineyard, but also an olive grove. So I can learn that directly. Amar Papa, Kedem Zayit ikre, Kedem setamala ikre. Rabbi says, no. If you want to say Kedem Zayit, a yard for olives, that's what it's called Kedem Zayit. But if you just say the word Kedem by itself, and the pasuk in Devarim only says Kedem by itself, then that refers only to grapes, and you never refer to an olive grove as Kedem by itself. So therefore, we cannot learn from olives directly. We need the Sad Hashaveh. Mikol Makom Kashya. Okay, back to our original question. From Kama and from Kedem, we can only learn about things that are offered on the Mizbeach. What about anything else that grows from the ground that a worker can eat from them as well? So Shmuel says, I know, I'll learn it from the word chermesh in that second pasuk in Devarim. That says you shall not take a sickle to it. Let's look at the pasuk again, right? Lo tanif. So that means anything that is cut by a sickle this law would apply to. So that's a lot of things, but still not everything. Okay, v'hai chermesh mi ba'ele b'shat chermesh echol shelo b'shamet chermesh lo techul. Hold on, but I already used the word chermesh to teach me that I'm only allowed to eat it as a worker at a time when it's ready for the sickle. But if it's not yet ripe, not yet ready for harvesting by the sickle, then one cannot eat it. So I need that word already. Oh no, that halacha that has to be ready to eat, I can learn that from the pasuk regarding the kedem. Don't put it in your basket. So it has to be ready to put in your basket, that you're ready to harvest it. But before that, you cannot eat. So I already know that law. So that therefore I can use the word sickle to teach me anything that you cut with a sickle. Telach de bar chermesh, delav bar chermesh minalan. Fine, that's all things that require a sickle for harvesting. But there's other things that things that grow in the ground, like carrots, that you don't use a sickle. What about those things? How do you know you can eat some of those? Ela amar b'Yitzchak amar kera kama lerabot kol ba'aleh kama. So Rabbi Yitzchak says we're going to learn it from the word kama. means standing. It means anything that all produce is included. Hold on, hold on. You already used kama to make a gezerah shava. That kama refers to only the 5 grains that you have to bring, that you have all required for challah. So didn't we already use kama? This is no. No, that the gezerah shava kama, we only applied that before we had this derasha from chermesh that anything that a sickle applies to. But now that we learn from chermesh that we are expanding the basic law of kama to refer to anything that you cut with a sickle, so now I'm not going to use kama as in a limiting way to say only the 5 grains. Okay, so kama lamali, the rabot kol bale kama. So why do I need kama? Is to be even more expansive, not only things that you cut with a sickle, but anything that grows. Okay, fine. Now, through the combination of sickle and standing grain, you learned all things that grow. You have to let the workers eat. So why do I need the pasuk regarding vineyard? A vineyard is included in that already. I need that pasuk for the specific halachot that we will learn from the wording in that pasuk. Kedetanya ki tavo nemar kan bi'av nemar lalan lo tavo alav hashemesh. The pasuk says when you come. Let's look at the pasuk where it said that ki tabo becherem re'echa, if you come to someone else's field. Now it says here the word bi'ah, and it also says regarding a worker, you have to pay him that same day. Don't let the sun go down upon him. Sun go down, it says tavo. So the word tavo is in the context of paying a worker on time. So that means that here also we're talking about a worker. So this is how the Gemara derives that. The Ravad derives that it's not talking about any passerby that they can go and take some grapes, but only someone who's working in the field while he's working and harvesting the grapes, then he and only he can eat from the grapes. Now why does it say your friend's field? To teach me that when is there a limitation that you cannot take so much and put them in a basket? That's only if it's another Jew's field. But if it's non-Jew's field, then you can go there and you can even fill a basket and take it. Fine, that makes sense according to the opinion that says you're not allowed to steal from a non-Jew. And that's why over here, if you're working in a non-Jew's field, then you can take. But according to the opinion that says stealing from non-Jews is permitted, so then anyone can go and take and fill a basket of grapes. Why do you have to tell me that a worker specifically can? Okay, scratch that. Kerem Re'echa teaches that your neighbor's field and not a field of Hekdesh. The Bet HaMikdash can own fields, and if you're working for the Bet HaMikdash field, then you cannot take any grapes. That's it, they're Hekdesh. That's what that teaches. You can eat a whole grape, but you cannot just suck out the juice of the grape and throw out the rest. Only if you eat the whole thing. Don't be wasteful like that, especially when you're taking from someone else. Because then you're going to take even more, because you won't be full as fast and you're throwing half out. And furthermore, you can eat grapes alone. You can't eat the grapes with something else. If you're going to start putting condiments on it and making them tastier, then you're going to eat even more. So you can eat plain grapes. How many plain grapes can one person eat? Right? Enough. So then that's a limitation on the all-you-can-eat rule. As much as you want, kenafshecha is referring to the owner of the field. So just as much as the owner would want. Just like, so too is the same applies to the worker. Man nafshecha, just like the owner can eat as much as he wants of his own grapes, and he doesn't have to pay anybody. So to the worker, don't stop him. He's allowed to eat as much as he wants until he gets full, and he doesn't have to pay for it. So now he can eat till he gets full, but not more than that, not excessive stuffing himself with it. That's not allowed. And so do not put any in a vessel to take home for later. So that means that only at the time that you are filling the baskets of the owner, meaning while you're actually harvesting and putting the grapes in the vessel for the owner, then at the same time you can eat while you work. But not at that time, when you're not actually doing the work for the owner, then you are not allowed to eat. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen v'Amen.